I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, February 20th, 2018. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing for the students that lost their lives at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and for Natalie Hickson, who was at a PE teacher at the junior high who lost her brother in that shooting as well. Pastor Chuck could come on up with Northwest Christian Church and lead us into prayer.
God, as we gather here tonight, we remember those students, administrators, faculty, an entire community of people who are suffering in Florida. God, as we gather and remember them, we're just reminded of the blessing of this community. God, as leaders in this community gather tonight to make decisions, I pray that you would give them wisdom. I thank you that in your word you say when we need wisdom that we can ask and you give it freely without finding fault. So God, please give wisdom tonight, give clear direction, and God, grant us a spirit of peace as issues are worked out and talked through. God, we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Okay, item 2, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support.
Motion supported. A discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 3 is the consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the February 6, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, the committee recommends to the full board to accept and place on file the general, savings, pooled funds, and CD reports from the treasurer. C, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the revenue, expense, and balance sheets of the period ending January 31st, 2018. D, the committee recommends to the full board to appoint Harry Lambers to the Library Advisory Board for a first term ending 12/31/2020. E, the committee recommends to the full board to accept with regret the resignation of Sheila Daugert from the Downtown Development Authority effective immediately. F, the committee recommends to the full board to appoint Tom Zebek as a Planning Commission representative to the Township, to the Board of Zoning Appeals. G, the committee recommends to the full board to appoint Krista Janizek to the Grant and Loan Committee for a third term ending 12/31/2019. I look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and supported. Discussion. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 4 is presentations. A, presentation by Damon Cecil, Bedford Township Ordinance Supervisor. Come on up. Let's make sure that green light's on the mic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Here, I'll pass them down, Damon.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm
thankful for all of the support that I have received and the ordinance department has received through the past few months here. I've worked with different members of the board on different projects, currently still working on things, and I just want you to know that I appreciate your support. As for my boss directly, I have walked into his office on many occasions with new ideas to better the community and never been turned away. So with that in mind, some of the things I'd like to address tonight. One, the ordinance department tonight, and starting this year, what we found is I realized that a lot of people in the community is not aware of some of the ordinances that we have. So this year, we're going to spend a lot of time trying to bring that across and educate the people so that they understand what the ordinance department does. One of the ways is we will be at the trade fair this year, and you all saw the brochure that we created, the guidebook, which I've had members on the board that has helped me with that, and I greatly appreciate that. I think that will be an asset to the community when the people get an opportunity to look at that. The next thing I'd like to do with that is to get it published on our website so that they can look at it and we can add to it directly. A few other things that we're working on is changing some of the ordinances. I go through them regularly when we find irregularities in them, or someone brings to our attention some new needs within the community. Some of the ones that we're working on currently is the home occupation ordinance, specifically dealing with the medical marijuana section. Some new things that we need to look at. Spoke with the fire chief, some of the concerns in the community regarding fire safety, if the fire department should get called out to some of these locations, some of the chemicals and things that are stored on site at those locations, some of the electrical power that's being generated at some of those, in some of these homes is not safe. So we want to work on getting that ordinance tuned up so that we can better serve them in allowing them to continue to do what they're doing, but at the same time regulate it enough that it's safe for the people in the residential areas where these things have been permitted. Another one that we've been working on is the snow removal ordinance. Apparently, the general public didn't realize that we had a snow removal ordinance, and it requires you that 24 hours after an accumulating snow, we don't set inches, but an accumulating snow, that snow is supposed to be removed from your sidewalks. If you don't currently do that and we get a complaint, because we are complaint-based, we will go out and at this time, and then you would be in violation, we would send you a letter giving you 48 hours to complete that task. At that time, if you don't complete that task, we could issue you a citation, and we will have our people come in and take care of that sidewalk for you, and then that's going to get assessed on your property taxes. So I would suggest that you do take care of that. At issue with some of the citizens that have contacted us is the additional 48 hours after the additional snowfall, which I believe some of the board members even addressed at one time. I agree with that. I really don't think 48 hours is necessary. I think that should be shortened to 24 hours because you've got 24 hours that you're supposed to be doing it and then an additional 24 hours it needs to be removed. I stress this because in two of the locations in the township, in the Lambertville area where the businesses are, as well as in the downtown Temperance area, we've had some situations this year where that snow needed to be removed. And in the Temperance area, I'm very concerned because we do have a lady that is blind and she uses a dog for her travels. And when the snow is covering the sidewalks and things of that nature, that makes navigating for her very difficult. So this is something we've paid close attention to this year. So snow removal. Another thing that we're looking at is this year, Mr. Peroni and the board, and we have looked at assisting the road commission on snow removal in some of the subdivisions. I commend this administration for trying to do that. I've lived in this township myself for over 25 years, and that's never happened before. So I'm proud of that. But in the meantime, we need an ordinance to kind of cover snow emergencies. So if we do get a lot of snow, That's an ordinance that we need to have so that the road commission crews, as well as the township crews, if they need to be able to get into these streets, get the people to stop parking their vehicles on the streets so that they can clean them properly. This is an ordinance that we've been working on. The next one is the fireworks ordinance. We're working on that. I had several calls last year regarding fireworks, and then they call the sheriff's department, and we simply don't have anything in place. And the noise ordinance, we can't use that along with the fireworks ordinance any longer. When the governor passed his legislating allowing the people to have fireworks and set them off, you can't use that ordinance, the noise ordinance, against something that the governor has approved to be happening. So we need to come up with an ordinance based off of the state statutes that the governor has put out so that we can address this problem within our community. So that's something we're looking at. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was some of the programs currently that the ordinance department has put into place. First and foremost, our snowbird program. I have had several people within the community take advantage of this. We have been able, since we've been doing it, we've come out to a couple of houses. I personally have been to two where during the Christmas time, packages got delivered on the porches where these people weren't home. We were able to contact the people. They were able to get a hold of their key holders and retrieve those packages before they could be stolen. They had no idea, obviously, because they were out of town, that this was taking place. Another thing about the Snowbird program, which I would like to recognize Tom Redmond tonight, is Tom Redmond, while being on patrol in our Snowbird program, came across the structure fire at a house just down from the residence where we had a house check. With his expertise coming from law enforcement like myself, he was able to go to the location. He checked for people within the home to make sure nobody was there and that he could serve whatever, and then he was able to use the radios that we have currently to contact dispatch to get the fire department dispatched. So at this time, Tom Redmond, would you stand? I'd like to tell you thank you very much.
I called it in on the radio. I went and checked the house, and within seconds after checking the house, Chief Adam Massingill was on the scene. The response time for the fire department was less than a couple of minutes, and they saved the structure. Unfortunately, some animals inside met their demise, but I just think the fire department is the best in the world.
With that comes the next program that I'm trying to launch. I've sent out letters recently to our community churches, specifically to the pastors, and I've also contacted the media, asking for citizen volunteers within this community to start a Support Our Seniors program, which is what the paperwork you have in front of SOS, which also stands for help. What I would like to do there is, as far as the ordinance department goes, most of the time, you know, we go out here to some of these homes, and a prime example is locations where the snow is piled up on their sidewalks, and they just have no one to help them. Rather than us in the ordinance department going there and having to issue citations and try to tax on their tax bill when they're already on fixed incomes, I would like to have a citizens committee that would be able, that we could contact when we have a situation like this, to be able to send somebody out there to take care of these problems for these senior citizens. And so that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I hate going to homes where senior citizens, even in the summertime, sometimes it's grass, sometimes it's blight. Their family members are either passed away or they're far away and they can't help them. This would be something that I think that our department, I would love to be able to offer to them. And so I'm asking, if you're listening out there and you read the papers, anyone who's interested in becoming a senior volunteer to contact our office and let me know. And once we get enough volunteers, I want to put a meeting together and we'll set up the criteria for that as to what the people need to do as far as to get that assistance.
Real quick on that, Phil, would we probably have to have these volunteers sign waivers Or is it something we need to worry about if somebody gets hurt while they're cleaning a driveway or raking a yard?
Typically, we would do that, a short waiver of liability,
Okay.
so that the township's not responsible should an injury
Okay,
occur, or, but nothing too extravagant.
okay. All right, we'll have to keep that in mind.
Another thing that we've done,
Yeah.
another thing that you have in front of you, Officer Shayla Pitson come up with this idea, and I liked it, was we're out in the community doing our property checks, doing our liquor inspections, and going on calls. A lot of times we see on our Facebook pages that people have lost their dogs in the community and they need help. So we come up with a program called Paw Patrol. And what that is if you have a lost dog within the community, because we are able to work with animal control and things of that nature, you can send Officer Shayla Pitson on our Facebook page at the Bedford Township Ordinance Facebook page a photograph of your dog and what the name is and where it was last seen. And as we're out on patrols, if we come across that dog, we'll contact you if you leave us the contact information, or we're able to check with animal control to maybe see if that's been impounded. So that's something new that she's rolled out, and I'm very proud of that program as well. Another thing that I want to give kudos to is to George Welling for his new program as far as putting together the YouTube and the way we do things here in the video. This is going to come in very handy and for us in the ordinance department to be able to put on some type of program that they can see live or go back to coming this spring when we want to address burning regulations and grass and things of that nature. It'll be out there. And we need to work together, our ordinance department, with George to get these things accomplished. And so for that, I'm grateful that the board, that we've got this type of thing going on here. And I think that about covers it for now, other than the Safety Fest. Safety Fest was an idea that when I worked in Ohio, I wrote a program called Safety Fest. And basically what that was is it was a safety day for the community, for the kids, to get the fire departments, the police departments, all aspects of safety involved in a one-day event where family members could bring the kids and they could meet the firefighters, the police officers, the DNR, the railroad, all these things, and promote safety within the community. So this is another thing that I'm working on currently to see if we can get this established. So that's pretty much what I have for now. Again, I thank each and every one of you for supporting us and working with us and helping to make us better, and also that we could better serve our community. Thank you.
Damon, I just want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication to this department. When we first started working together, one of my first items was to bring this ordinance department to where it's serious, you know, and it's very important to have a strong ordinance department. And you have really gone above and beyond with your duties, and I appreciate that because it really shows. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for him before you leave? We didn't really open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions about anything? None? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, number 5, public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. You have a comment, come on up. Okay, seeing none. 6, staff reports. A, request for approval of the resolution of support of the Downtown Temperance Transportation Alternatives Program, also known as TAP application. Come on up. So, a little high for you.
Different height, yes. Good evening. I wanted to talk a little bit about this resolution you have before you and tell you how we came up with a project. So we were here, Barry and I, in January 16, I think, was at the last meeting when you gave us the go-ahead with a TAP project. And we met as a subcommittee a couple of times, both in January 23rd and on February 7th, We looked at options, considered various projects, and came to a project that I've got a board here that I realize that you're somewhat far away, but I'll explain what this is all about. So this is what we identify as a project. First, what we would like to do is complete the sidewalk system from Ivor Lindsay all the way to Howard Street, north to Howard. There are a few gaps, and that's what we'll do. We'll have the sidewalk complete. There are a few spots that need repair to make it accessible, and those will be covered also with the grant or the project. Second, what we'll do is add some pavement markings, and in the pavement markings, we'll have bike lanes, north and south, and a parking lane on the east side. The road width is such that we're only able to accommodate one parking lane as well as the 2 bike lanes. We'll have also the pedestrian signals at the intersection and some beautification and streetscape improvement at the intersection. And there what we're trying to accomplish is what you have at the bank as far as the pavement and the feature, the wall there. We would like to replicate that at the 4 corners, essentially, and add some benches and add some planters with landscaping and some street trees in the center part of the downtown Temperance. That will take place in easements right along the roadway. And we've already contacted some of the owners, not all of them, but I understand that this is forthcoming. And they're all on board with the project. So at this point, we're looking for you to approve this resolution so that we can move ahead with the project and submit it by March 7th. So what you have, what we have at this point is a project estimated construction costs of in between, I mean, I think the way it reads is 370 and 400. What we estimate at this point is 381, 400 is our actual number. But you never know how the bids are going to come, so that's why we're having a range for you in front of you. And we're hoping to submit, and that's what you're approving, a match of that construction cost of 30 to 35%, which would come up to the amount that you have told us that you have, that you can spend, which is the $120,000 that we talked about originally. So I'm here for questions. Barry and I are here for questions. So if you would like to know more, we can give you more.
Anybody have any questions? Ms. Tinneberry?
The streetscape thing you said was in the middle of the intersection?
Oh, no,
Oh.
this would be in the corner where the sidewalks are.
You said the corner, and then you said something else about, okay, so is there going to be a left turn lane there and all of that?
We are not doing any improvement to the striping on the roadway. These are not activities that are covered by the TAP grant.
Okay, but.
So it could be, we are leaving it open for the future if there could be some other grant that we could get through the road commission or otherwise, that could be accomplished. We're trying to not do any work that would have to be redone should that happen in the future.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you said something in the intersection.
No, we're not changing the geometrics of the curb cuts or anything like that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
Move that we adopt the resolution of support of Downtown Temperance Transportation Alternative Program application as presented.
Support.
Motion supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 6B, request for approval to purchase 4 PCs from IT Right for the Bedford Fire Department. Chief, if you could come on up. Go ahead, Trudy.
When we replaced the PCs in the township and some in the fire department, at the time, Adam wasn't sure how many to replace. We replaced the ones that we thought needed to be. But later, when IT Right came through and started changing everything out in the server and upgrading what they were gonna need for HIPAA laws for their things, they found that there were 4 computers that were still XP computers, which are not supported any longer. So this is just to upgrade those. Actually, there's 4 computers, not 3, so they're gonna be upgrading 4 computers. With the upgrade, the Microsoft 2016, and then their dual monitors, so they would need 6 total. That cost for all 4 would be $5,076. They are looking at, when you look at the quote on the front, they are looking at the PC mid-range, not just the basic. So those computers were $100 more. They were $750 instead of $650 each.
How are we compared to other companies with these quotes? I know last time when we did the replacement with the township, it was cheaper.
We didn't get apples to apples, but Adam did go looking around, and the IT Right was still just a couple dollars cheaper. Couple dollars on the computers, a few dollars on the software, and I'm not sure about monitors, about the same price, maybe IT Right was just a little bit less. I looked into monitors, and they were comparable to other monitors out there.
I think they were comparable. We also, we got a quote from a company in Adrian. I think they were all within a few dollars of each other.
I just, when we did this back originally, when we replaced all the computers here at the township, what was the reason why we didn't put it out for bid? Is it, I guess I want you to
IT
re-explain why.
IT Right oversees these computers, so they'll be able to get into them, they'll be able to function them. They also built these computers to what our needs were. It's not like you could just go to the store and buy one off the shelf. These were built to our specifications of what we needed. So that's why, I mean, the monitors, we don't have to get through IT Right, it's a monitor. But when I looked out there, the monitors were comparable, actually a little bit less. Because I bought mine through Quill, I got a good price, but that was on sale, now they're not. So their prices were actually lower than what I could get them for. And the Office, they're charging us $1 less than what I could get it anywhere else. So Microsoft Office is usually $229.99. They're charging us $229.
Okay. Ms. Tenenberry?
You said 4 computers, but there's 6 monitors?
They're asking for dual for each, but that would mean 2 more monitors. I didn't include that.
Correct.
So are you,
Yeah, the workstations that we have in front of the radios, so the one side has the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch, the other side is our reporting software, so that we can interchange and we're not closing and opening. We've started moving towards the dual monitors. I think most of the township is starting moving towards the dual monitors so we can monitor the active calls that are going on right now while we're doing reporting and finishing things like that up. So that's correct. I believe it's about, it'd be around $1,269.
So you're looking at 8 monitors then, or
That's correct.
6?
8 monitors.
Okay, so you,
that's in the, I believe that
so
was
the
in the
5,076 is with 8.
5,076
Okay,
is
I
with
thought you
8.
said 6.
Yeah, well, the quote said 6 on the back.
Okay.
But he's asking for an extra computer, and it would be 2 extra monitors, like Nancy was saying.
Any more discussion from board members? Okay. Mr. Steiner?
I'll say definitely XP, that's ancient relic at this time. Can't say enough about the safety and security of upgrading our equipment. Company I work for is extremely large and has IT teams the size of an army, and we got hit with a major malware attack today. So that's something we need to definitely keep our equipment upgraded and up to date. I know exactly what you're talking about multiple workstations. I've got actually 2, I've got a 27 and a 28 inch. at work because of multitask. So my question is, for a small variance, is 22 the right size, or is a 27 or something even make more sense? They're not that much more money. I've been researching them myself online lately because I've been looking. I think I saw about $179 to $189, you can get a 25 to 27 inch monitor, just depending on the type, so.
We can look into them, we can check and see. I would certainly like to at least get the computers themselves ordered this month, so we can get them coming in and get these XPs out, but.
I mean, if that's something the board would be willing to look at, I think I'd like you to take the opportunity to get your equipment ordered from the computer standpoint. Do a quick research. I mean, we can always go back to IT, right? They don't have to build the monitor, they just,
Right.
they'll get the monitor, so. Just something, I mean, from, again, people that multitask and have stuff going on all the time, the more space, the better.
Sure.
Mr. Francis?
Trudy, the number that you read off, that 5,076, was that for 4 computers and 8 monitors?
Correct,
And 4 Microsoft Office software package?
correct.
Okay, so the only change we're talking about is it might be more money on monitors if we choose to upgrade to a larger size. Why don't we consider approving a package not to exceed, say, $5,500? That'll give them enough flexibility to get it done, rather than have to come back to the board to approve a $40 increase per monitor if he wants to go that way.
Did you want bigger monitors?
We can certainly check into it. I'd like to see what I'm not sure what we got the last time. Were they the 22?
22.
Were they the 22s last time? Okay, it's workable, but I would tend to agree with Mr. Steiner. We should probably check the pricing on the larger ones. It's a little easier.
If you're gonna go with larger, then I could probably get them through Quill cheaper. I only checked on the 22.
Okay.
Sometimes I can find them on sale, though, the
Sure.
larger ones.
Yeah, we'd certainly be eager to look into it a little bit and see if there was some value in a little bigger one, because you're correct. It's easier to work on, the larger computer.
And that number that Mr. Francis just mentioned, I mean, that gives you about $50 extra per monitor, so that puts you at the 185, as I was saying, you know, you can find some 179, 189.
I can't see him being more than that for each monitor.
He's not, we don't need high definition and all that, so.
Okay, all right, I look for a motion.
I have a question before
Oh,
we
go
go.
ahead.
I asked today, but I forgot what the answer was. Where's this money coming from?
Our
Do we
cap-
have a capital line item in the township
Yes.
budget? Or
In the fire department.
Fine, okay, I just wanted, I forgot what the answer was.
Yeah, the fire department, our capital outlay.
Yeah, fine.
I look for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion
Yep.
that the board approves the mid-range purchase of 4 PCs listed to the specs by IT Right, and the addition of 8 monitors not to exceed a purchase of $5,500.
I'll second.
Okay, motion second, discussion.
Can we just do a friendly amendment to add the office? Because that's a
Microsoft Office software, yes,
16.
4 of those.
Sure.
Steiner, good with that?
That's good.
Okay, Ms. Tenberry, discussion?
Yeah, I prefer to see the numbers before me, and not have to vote on something that came and is totally inaccurate. But I suppose in light of, and fire department or no fire department, I mean, I'm all for safety too, but I'm all for, you know, getting the right information that's put in our packet as well. I'm not going to oppose it, but I just want to make it clear that in the future,
You talking about the
I,
monitor
for one,
upgrade?
would like to see paperwork that represents what we're voting on.
Okay, so that changed from going from 22 to 27 is what you're saying.
Well, I think she's more
Going from
referring to
three
the
computers to 4 computers and
Because
6
they reported
monitors
three,
to,
but he
I'm
needed
just,
4.
Okay, okay.
I mean,
okay.
it's not that
Six going
difficult.
to 8.
I'd like to see
That's all.
accurate information.
When they submitted the quote, it's a little deceiving because they gave us the different options. So the intent of the quote is would be to use the unit price. So it's, we can certainly, or we can go back and ask them to provide 4. and take the basic PCs as well as the mid-ranges PCs off if it would make it a little easier to read.
Well, the count isn't even the same. No, you said you need them, I think it's important to make the point that we should have accurate information before us.
Okay. We have a motion, support, any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Richburger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
Thanks.
Item 6C, request for approval to purchase a Dutch door for the ordinance department. Officer Cecil, come on up.
What I'm asking for in regards to the Dutch door is for safety and security purposes for our office. All the other offices within the township have a counter which divides the public from entering into their space. The ordinance department currently does not have anything like that, and at different times, even since I've been here, we've had irate individuals come in because they either got a letter or a citation for something, and they're able to just walk right in our office. And sometimes our backs are turned, so they're on top of us before we can turn around and even address the issue. Purchasing this door would give us a semi-counter because it's a Dutch door, and it would allow us to have the same access, the same as the rest of the offices within the township. In regards to the quote that you have in front of you, we did contact other door companies within the area to do this type of work, and we were all referred to Tanner Door here in Bedford because they specialize in that. And in researching it, myself and speaking with Mr. Peroni, apparently Tanner Door is the same company that also installed all the current doors and the things that we have in the township. So they're familiar with everything that we have in here. So that is why you don't see additional quotes, and that is why the ordinance department is asking this board to approve this amount so that we can have the security as well.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, not to contradict you, but there is no counter in the supervisor's office. So that, that's a little different than what the memo says. Why couldn't you just keep your door closed, and then when someone knocks, there's plenty of other meeting rooms on the second floor that you could go and sit. My understanding of a counter is for the purpose of the public to be able to use it to fill out documents or whatever, information. The clerk's department has a lot of different things that people have to come and fill out. So I'm really not in favor of this door because I see other alternatives.
Well, the door, to answer the question, if we closed our door, we also don't have any windows in our room. It is very small. It's like going into a closet. And when we close that door, we get no air circulation in there. Also, we can't hear anything on the outside from people coming or coming by or whatever. If there was such a time that we would have a problem here, we wouldn't be able to hear that either. You're right, there is no counter in the supervisor's office. However, the supervisor has a buffer because he has a door before his door, and he has someone in the front office that can address an issue before it gets to him. We have no one in a front office, and we don't have a secretary. And when somebody walks in our office, like I said, they're right on top of us. Also visible to them is our computers, and if we have them open to certain things, they're able to stand there and look at what we have up, which might be information that you wouldn't want someone else to see. So again, not only is it a safety factor, but I just think that it makes our office more professional. It does give us an opportunity for people to come up to a counter, and we can walk up to them and address the issues with them. And if they need to fill something out or whatever, they have something to write on right there. We don't have that space currently in our office. When they fill out the snowboard house check, some of them come to our office. We don't have a counter to offer them, so they either have to sit at our desks or lean on a file cabinet or take it home. So I just think it'd be something that would be nice to offer the,
Isn't there a table right there in the hallway? It used to be a table that they could sit down at and, no, it's gone?
well, there is a table there, but sometimes the chairs are missing, and sometimes, you know, like I said, it's busy with other people. You've got planning, you've got the building department, and sometimes they have people waiting there, and I believe there's only a limited number of chairs, 2, I believe, sometimes 1, so there really isn't anywhere to sit.
The one thing I will say is you definitely don't want to be in that office with the door shut. I was in that office for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most, door wide open, and just about walked out in a pure sweat. So
That's correct.
there's definitely no circulation in that office.
Yes, sir.
So with the Dutch door, there would be a little counter on the Dutch, on top of it? 'Cause
You're
you could
right.
have- You could have a little mini counter on there.
Right, right. There would be a counter on the bottom half. The top half would be open, and again, it allows people to come to our office. It just keeps them from charging right on in and into us. Just to make that perfectly clear, the incident that I had my first year here, a gentleman was irate. He barged in, and I ended up having to call the sheriff's department to have that subject removed. So it does happen, and I just think that this would prevent any future problems.
I know our
Francis?
department sends all the irate people up to your office.
I
so-
appreciate that, too. I appreciate that.
Is there a heating and air conditioning vent in that room?
There is, but like I said, again, it's such a small area. My understanding is when the building was developed, that was not initially going to be the ordinance office. It was going to be elsewhere. But because we work in close conjunction with the building department and the planning department, that's why we're on this floor, which I don't have a problem with, because that is who we work a lot with, is the building and planning department. But it's just there's no other way to arrange the room, and there's no window with a view even. So, I mean, like I said, Rick's been in there, he's worked with us. You got the computers and everything else running. When you close that door, it gets very stifling.
That's another issue we might want to look at. Maybe there's something that we can do to somewhat alleviate that problem. But I think the Dutch door is a good idea. I worked in an office in Sylvania, and we had one put in, and it was very useful, very convenient, and it stops people from walking in and standing on your back. You don't even know they're there. And I think that's important.
Yes, sir.
Should have.
Well, I will say this, when he is at his computer, there's times I walk right up there and I have to say, hey, Damon, you know, I mean, I could, you know, so, I mean, it's, you know, we just went through this Alice training as well with the sheriff's department, and it was very good training, but that was too, I mean, you don't really see what's going on, you know, you don't have monitors, security monitors in that room, like some of the other departments, so you'd be able to, you know, so.
Only thing I would say is I think in the spirit of who I think this board wants to be and be open and accessible and helpful to the public, I don't know that a closed door fixes that, but we also have a fundamental responsibility for the safety of the employees of the township. And I don't think it's unrealistic that, you know, this isn't a expenditure that's excessive, but I think it suits the need, and it also allows them to continue to be servicing and open and available to the public.
I agree.
Thank you.
Ms. Tinneberry?
I think $1,400 is accessible for a door. I didn't pay $1,400 for any door in my house.
It's a Dutch door, though.
These are
Custom.
commercial doors. They're
Commercials.
heavier than heck. It would be just like the other doors, would it not?
That's correct. And the other door, just so you know, the assessing department, Alan has shown interest that he would like that door. So that door that we have currently isn't going to go to waste. He has a door where he can't see out into his employees' area either, so he would like that. So, I mean, I just, like I say, with Tanner Supply, They did the initial on this building. They're familiar with everything. I totally understand why other companies would defer to them since they are the experts in this area. And I would hopefully encourage that the board would go along with this so that we can get this taken care of.
And I think if it was $1,400 for a closet door, that's excessive, but there's a safety component to this, which you can't overlook.
Mr. Fredericks?
I'm assuming there's a key set that goes along with this.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, fine.
Any more discussion? Okay, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the purchase of a Dutch door as described in the quote from Tanner Supply Company for the ordinance department room in the total cost of $1,400 as presented.
Support.
Friendly amendment. Damon and Tom have to do the painting.
Okay, motion, support, discussion. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
No.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Prony?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-1.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Yep.
Okay, old business. 7A, request for approval of a request to rezone parcel number 5802-034-001-10, southwest corner of Lewis Avenue and Fire Creek Court, from RT 2 Family Residential to C1 Local Business. Mr. Fredericks?
You can see by the note from Ms. Kincaid that this was at one time already rezoned, but it didn't get published, and so it's required that we do this again. So therefore, Mr. Supervisor, I move approval of the request to rezone parcel number 5802-034-001-10 from RT, two-family residential, to C1 local commercial for the following reasons. The rezoning is consistent with the master plan. The rezoning is reasonably consistent with the area uses along Lewis Avenue. The Township Planning Commission and Monroe County Planning Commission approved the rezoning.
Support.
Motion supported, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Prony?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. 7B, discussion of temporary employment. Mr. Fredericks?
Well, at our last meeting, there were questions about what a seasonal worker is and what temporary help is, and a number of other questions about definitions. So I just took it upon myself to kind of draft some language that we can look at, which essentially says that everybody we hire who's not full-time is temporary. And it could be for 1 day, 1 week, or several months, depending upon, A, what the tasks are, and what the department head needs, and what the elected official who has responsibility for that direction also need. So I just put some language together for discussion. I did get a note from Ms. Tinneberry. With respect to the last sentence where it says the elected official having administrative responsibility for the department shall advise the township board of the demonstrated need for temporary employment, including task or task requires, the wages to be paid, and the expected time of employment. She suggested, and I think it's a good idea, that the elected official simply provide a completed copy of the engagement letter to the board as information in the board package for the next meeting subsequent to the engagement, and everything that you need to know is in that letter. This is here for discussion. Any questions, ideas, concerns? I haven't run this past our law firm yet, but questions and discussion.
Ms. Hirschberger?
The question I have is, on occasions, I will use somebody for 1 day because our office goes to training. We need somebody 1 day. Would we create a temporary employment letter saying that this person could work one day, they would work elections. I'm not sure how we would put that in for estimated or actual hours to be employed.
Well,
Do we do one every year?
The whole story is that you could do one every year if that's what you choose to do. All I'm saying is that good business would suggest that we have something in writing, one, that says who the person is, what you expect them to do, what you're going to pay them, and some estimate of how long they're going to be around. That's just kind of good business. Now, how you write that letter or how you move forward, I think, is at your discretion. But it makes sense rather than say, okay, why don't you come in here next week, Charlie, and work for a day, and I'll pay you $1.50. I don't want to have a situation where 4 people come back in and say, I thought you told me it was $40 an hour. No, I only told you $1.50.
So Lamar, when I hire my
I think
season,
that it's
so when I
good
hire,
business to do that.
when I hire the seasonal people in the next couple months,
Yeah.
I'll come with a letter that says I'm gonna be hiring 4 individuals, starting at this date, at this pay, at this many hours, and they'll end.
They'll
And I'll
end in
give you direction of what they're gonna be doing, grass, leaves, whatever, and then it'll end at this date. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Sure. Sure. I think it's good business to do that.
And come to the board for approval.
No, you don't have to.
Don't
It
have to
says
do that, no.
if the department head has the administrative and you have the cost for the individuals in your budget, you don't have to come here for approval.
Okay, all right.
All you're doing is just telling us, because Ms. Tinbury at one time said she came in here and saw some people, had no idea who they were, found out that they were working for us.
Ms. Tinneberry?
I totally agree with what Lamar has drawn up and his addition of what I had asked for in terms of a copy to the board. But I agree that you wouldn't have to come to the board for approval, other than if you're going to pay them in excess of what any other temporary or seasonal employee has been paid in the past. I don't think any one of the 3 full-time officials has the right to determine the rate of pay, because the trustees are responsible as well for the fiduciary health of the township, and I don't think anyone has the right to just determine how much to pay someone. It seems to me that you have said in the past that you have some kind of a pay scale already established. So following that pay scale would not, I wouldn't expect you to get approval from the board.
Yes, all temporaries are hired at the same price or same rate of pay.
Right.
So,
With this language, I was not trying to impede or put impediments in the department heads to come to the elected official and say, we're going to have need for temporary help. I could write a 10-pager here. That's not what we're interested in. It's sort of saying, if you want to do that, just make sure that we have a letter that says who it is, how much they're going to be paid, generally what their tasks are, and for how long generally they're going to be working. I think that's only good business. Then you just send a letter to us, because if the department head, with the approval of the elected official having responsibility for department, may fill it without township board approval, provided it's in your budget. And the vacancies with this has been in the old language, the vacancies are filled from a labor pool of Bedford Township residents whenever practical. So from that perspective, I'm not suggesting we're doing anything different than what you've done in the past, other than we're now calling everybody temporary employment. We don't have to worry about seasonal workers, part-time workers, this kind of worker, another whatever. They're all temporary employment. Write a letter, the person signs it, they know what they're being paid, they know often how they're going to work or when. They also know generally what they're supposed to do. That seems to be a simple business requirement, but this is just here for discussion.
Okay, any more discussion, Mr. Steiner?
The only thing I can see different on temporary, if it's someone that you're bringing temporary for like a clerical operation, filing, doing, somebody does a lot of filing and things like that, versus what if we had to bring somebody in temporary as an assessor to help Alan at a level 2 or something, that's not going to be the same kind of pay as a general temporary. So I think there probably needs to be a little bit of scale work done by job functions and classifications as well.
Ms. Hirschberger?
In the past, when that has come up, like when we had that happen, when we brought in assessors, then Paul came to the board and said, I'm bringing in an assessor, they have this skill, they're at this level, I want to pay them this, and the board approved that. So if we just continue with that.
Okay, so in those instances, that would be an approval.
That's a part-time employee, though, right?
Well, you brought them as part-time,
Yeah,
yes, but
that's
even
a-
a seasonal, we could do the same thing if they have, you know,
Yeah.
you don't want to bring in a seasonal level 4 assessor and pay him the $14.70 that we pay another
Mr. Francis?
seasonal.
I don't have any problem with the language on this, except for one thing. It says no bennies paid to any other than full-time. Our existing policy does have a little benefit for holiday pay for seasonal and temporary if they meet the criteria that the full-time meet, which is work the day before and the day after. So if we're going to say no benefits, we might want to change that policy or reword it. It's policy number 7.4.2 in the existing one. So, you know, we're just talking discussion. We're not wording an actual change at this point. But when we get to that, which is probably the next step, make sure we're not trapped by an old policy in existence.
Well, I guess I'd ask the question, you have a temporary employee. Now, the summer employees, we use that word carefully, they're temporary. But, the supervisor needs those folks to mow lawns and do all the work all summer long. Do we give them benefits?
No.
I think, I'll go look at that policy that you've just 7.4.2 and see what it says. And then I'll make some more changes to this and bring it back again. This is just some, do we want to do something like this? That's my question.
I think it's good. I think it helps. I just, to answer, I would assume that Ms. Tinneberry, we didn't want approval. She just wanted to know who was being hired. That way, there was no surprises when she walked in here and seen the employee. This doesn't solve that.
The policy that is here, the language that was in this section, you know, I said delete 2.3.5.3, which essentially is the seasonal worker. It says that the department head doesn't have to come to the board for approval if the costs are contained in your budget. So if it's in your budget already and you anticipated the fact that you're going to hire these people temporarily, then and in that event, you don't have to come to the board for approval because it's within your budget. You've already anticipated the fact that you're going to spend that money. If you are going to go outside your budget, then in that event, you'd have to come to the board for approval with that.
I'm
Because
just
you'd
saying,
amend your budget.
how do we get around somebody walking in, a trustee, and seeing a worker there and then being surprised that they're working there?
I can't answer that question.
That was part of the discussion.
I wouldn't be
right, Ms.
able to
Tinneberry?
answer that question.
He said it, and as long as we get a copy, you wouldn't be bringing someone in until they have this letter of understanding between the full-time official and the temporary employee. All you need to do is give us a copy of that in the next board packet.
Okay.
I mean, you know, as long as we see a copy of it to know, okay, there's this new person, get in there and meet them if you don't know them.
I'm just
That's all.
saying, if it's not on paper, it might not get done. Maybe
Well,
not from this board,
No,
maybe another
he
board.
did say, give a copy to the board, under info.
Okay,
Not
all right.
under
Yeah.
approval, under info.
I just wanted to make sure that
But
was met.
something that Mr. Francis just said, why are we paying some temporary employees benefits and others not? I think that should be universal. Personally, I don't think temporary employees should get benefits, but he just, or someone just said that you don't pay the summer mowing crew benefits on the holidays, but you do
I don't
somebody
think
else.
any temporary employees should get benefits.
I don't think they ever have.
I'll go.
We should clean that up.
Let me
It's
go back and
cleaned
look
up,
at
but
this
I don't
benefit.
think anyone
this-
ever has.
I'll go look at this provision,
Not that I'm aware of.
and then I'll bring it back to the next meeting with some changes that, you had some issues, some others have issues. I'll include those issues in the next draft, and we'll go from there.
Very good.
The other comment I had is the word engagement letter. By profession, I'm an auditor. Engagement letter has a legal definition. I know this isn't accounting work and it's not auditing, but the word engagement letter, maybe we could change it to a memo of understanding, or something other than engagement letter.
Well, when
I know you were fishing around
when you
for
hire
what
the
you call it.
auditor, you get an engagement letter with the auditor, and he sends back to you, here's what I am going to do.
Correct.
And he is an independent contractor who comes in and does work, and he even tells you what he will be looking at. He will tell you the scope of his audit, and he was essentially saying, I'm just looking at the stuff you give me. When Alan hires an outside assessor to do industrial assessing, then, and in that event, that is also a contract employee who is given a specific direction, go over to the industrial park and assess all of the buildings and the operations. That is an extensive discussion and an extensive contract, and tell them exactly what to do. Those are not temporary employees. Those people are independent contractors performing service for the township. So I think those are two different issues. I'm looking at, just as our noble clerk said, I'm bringing somebody in to watch one day while all of my people are off being trained for elections. Or you're bringing somebody in for 2 weeks to do some work in the Treasurer's Department. Those I consider temporary, and I think you ought to have some kind of a letter that says that this is what they get paid and this is why, but it's in your budget already. Those two examples, the assessing department and the letter with McGuire, those are independent contractors who are doing a specific job for us that we know about. And that's also in the budget anyhow. I will do some more work on this and bring it back.
Okay. All right, moving on to 8A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $185,453.83. Fire District, $9,155.26. Police Fund, $97,499.36. Park Fund, $698.49. Library Fund, $4,291.43. Water Revenue Fund, $37.15. Indian Acres SAD, $758.75. Mohawk Trails SAD, $1,103.50. Downtown Development Authority, $1,300. Sewer O&M Fund, $698.10. Trust and Agency Fund, $138, for a grand total of $301,133.87.
I'll support.
Motion supported, discussion. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, request for final preliminary plat approval for Village Meadows Plat 3 and 4. Mr. Fredericks?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a request for the final preliminary plat approval for Village Meadows Plats 3 and 4. The plat consists of about 23.8 acres with 11 lots in Plat 3 and 14 lots in Plat 4, rezoning for a total of about 25 lots. We bring the developer here if there are any questions. None. Therefore, Mr. Supervisor, upon recommendation of the Township Planning Commission, I move approval of the final preliminary plat for Village Meadows Plat 3 and 4 on parcel number 5802, 014, 067, 02, located on Temperance Road east of Lewis Avenue, conditioned upon satisfaction of all comments in letters from Manick and Smith Group, Monroe County Road Commission, Monroe County Drain Commission, and the Bedford Fire Department, and securing necessary permits from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and deed restrictions, if any, submitted to Township Council for review and approval.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Ms. Tenneberry?
I just want to thank Mr. Binkowski for moving forward on this. I'm so excited to see these additional plats going in. It's been sitting there a long time, and it's exciting, especially with the new talk and development about temperance and moving forward in that. It's one of the highlights of my year so far.
Thank you.
And also, good job from a local guy that's continued to build your business here. I know you probably had a few thoughts when you decided to get into this business and lay out some money, and it's just the right thing to do, go into business for yourself, and it's an industry that can be tough, it can be exciting, it can be hard on your finances, so kudos to you for you continuing to build your business here in Bedford.
Thanks.
Yeah, and on to that, I hear a lot of positive about the work you do, and I tell people when they call and ask, I say, just pick somebody local, and that's very important, because you do hear the horror stories about builders, and so we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and support.
One question, you do have the MDEQ permit already, or are you getting it?
We have the
Because you're messing
approval
with some
from them.
wetlands and stuff?
We're not going to be affecting any wetlands.
Okay,
There's
thank
a
you.
ditch running through, but we won't be affecting it.
I know that was a question that came up at the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8C, request to waive the site plan and BZA fees for improvements proposed to the Bedford O&M wastewater treatment plant located on Lavoie Road. Mr. Fredericks?
You have an opportunity to read again the memo from Ms. Kincaid from Planning. There's to be some work completed at the wastewater treatment plant, and we normally waive the fees for that since we'd be taxing ourselves in a way. So therefore, Mr. Supervisor, I move the board waive the site plan fee of $1,500 and the BZA fee of $275 for improvements proposed for the township wastewater treatment plant.
Support.
Motion is supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8D, request for approval of various Monroe County Road Commission road improvement contracts for the 2018-2019 construction season. Board action is needed. I just want to say real quick that I've worked with Mr. Francis on this committee for a while now, and I want to say I appreciate your expertise in this area and your thought and process that goes into it. I do appreciate it. I know you work very hard on putting together this stuff, and you make it easy on me.
Well, that certainly wasn't my intent.
You do.
No. The package has a summary sheet that shows all 6 of them and how much the township share is, how much the road commission share is, and one of the projects we're sharing with IDA, that's number 6. We need to approve each of these contracts individually. Maybe the best thing to do would be to just go through them one at a time. And the first one is Monroe Road from Stearns to Summerfield. It's 1.05 miles. It's a mill and fill plus 2 inches of hot mix asphalt. The total contract cost is $169,609, of which we pay 100%. So I guess I move that we approve that contract with the Monroe County Road Commission as presented.
Second.
Motion, supported, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
The second one is a contract for Crab Road from Erie to Samaria, which is 1.05 miles. It's a larger contract. It's a base stabilization and 2 lifts of hot mix asphalt that you can see on the schedule. The total cost for this project is $376,758. Again, 100% funded by the township. And I move that we approve that as presented.
Support.
Motion, supported, Mr. Clemens, discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
The next one is for a contract for Dean Road from Crab to Minks. It's a little over a mile, 1.01 miles, and it's a single chip seal. The total cost is $18,330, of which the township responsibility is $13,748, with the road commission picking up the balance, which is $4,582. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion, supported, discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
We're getting there. The next one is a contract for Douglas Road from Samaria to Erie. It's .99 miles. That one is another big contract, or a big job. It's a base stabilization plus 2 lifts of hot mix asphalt as shown. The total contract cost is $361,645, of which the township is paying 100%. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion, supported, discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
2 more to go. The next one is for Peel Road from Summerfield to the West Township line. That's .24 miles, and it's a single chip seal. The total cost of that contract is $7,582, of which the township's share is $5,687, and the road commission's share is $1,895. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion, supported, discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
The road commission just did this last year. I'm going to vote for it because another seal on it won't hurt. But the road commission just did this last year from the Summerfield to the township line. So are they saying they just want to put another layer on it?
Yes,
Okay, fine.
and as I recall,
hurt
we
it.
talked about that
Okay,
when we did that, but
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
And the last one is a contract for Route Road from Secor to Lewis. That's 3.01 miles. It's a single chip seal. This contract we share with Ida Township because they own half the road and we own half, or half the road is in Ida and half the road is in Bedford. The total contract cost is $54,949. Bedford Township share is $20,606. The Monroe County Road Commission share is $13,737, And Ida Township share is the same as Bedford, $20,606. So I move that we approve this contract as presented.
Support.
Motion supported, discussion? Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Barone?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
Now, to summarize these all add up to a total cost of $988,873, total contract cost. A lot of money. It about matches what we've done over the last few years, every year, this or more. But we're getting a lot of roads done, and most of them haven't been touched in a long time. So thank you for your support.
I agree there. Okay, item 8E, request for approval to give financial support to the Bedford Senior Center. Okay, we go through this every single year. There was some questions from Mr. Fredericks as to whether or not legally we can do this. He looked into that, and we are. So
The answer is we can.
I appreciate that. It's always good to check. So I look for a motion.
Well, since I'm a member of the senior center, I suppose that I would not have a conflict of interest, suggesting that the township make a $12,500 contribution to the operation of the Bedford Senior Center in support of the Bedford Township citizens.
Support.
Motion supported, discussion? Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Barone?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8F, discussion of the road committee's recommendation regarding financing a package of various road maintenance and improvement projects for the sale of bonds. This is another item Mr. Francis and myself and Mr. Bushman have been working on. You know, we got to this because we've talked for a while now as to how far out all these projects are. Some of these northern projects that are just in dire need. Some of them are 40 years old. So we started thinking in what we can do and put our heads together and, you know, some options, and this is what we've come up with. Go ahead, Mr. Francis.
And we've talked about it before, and I guess I've couched it in terms of a bond item. This doesn't have to be a bond item. This, I think we should seek the possibility of financing through banks, the local banks that are around. They do that. I don't recall that they've ever done it on a road project for Bedford, but I know they've done it for some in Monroe County. I think we ought to ask them. If we did that, that might eliminate a lot of the cost of the bond agent. Sometimes that's 40 grand or more. Depends on the size of the bond issue, or the bonds to be sold. But if we could finance it through MBT or Fifth Third or any other bank that's around here that would like our business for that, we ought to seek that, and I intend to do that. But it's explained in my little memo that the board got as a bond project, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. In essence, what this does is it packages 10 projects, and you have a list on the back side of the first page that shows what those projects are. Some of them are primary roads, some of them are local roads. The primary roads, in effect, is Whiteford Center, from the West Township line all the way to the Ohio State line. That contract, the total is estimated at this point, it's not a contract, it's an engineering estimate at this point, is $597,999. That's an estimate that we've got today. There might be some other changes, but this, I'm not looking for a vote on a contract. I'm trying to see if we can have consensus of the board that we want to do this. Do we want to package a bunch together? These are the ones that the road committee has been working on and are suggesting that we include in that package, should we do that. The other items, as you can see in the local roads, it's Crab Road from Stearns to Telegraph. It's completing what we started. It also includes Crab Road from Samaria to Rauch. The next one is Douglas from Samaria to Rauch. It's Jackman from Samaria to Rauch. And then two on Erie Road Lewis to Crab, and Erie Road Crab to Minks. What this does is something that we laid out a few years back, that we would like to get the northern roads done. They're low traffic counts compared to Secor Road, for instance, but those roads haven't been touched in 40 years. They're disintegrating. We've driven them. They are in tough shape and need to be worked on. This is a proposal where we could do all of those in the next construction year rather than term it out and take maybe one a year for 6 years.
If we're lucky. It could take.
Yeah, it could
take
be
10
longer
years.
than that. Now, there is a cost to finance that. I estimated that we might be able to get financing at, say, 3.5%. That's a good rate. I don't know if it's high or low. It's just a working number. If we were to finance $2.5 million, which is the total of this package, at 3.5% for 10 years, it's $473,000. $473,780 of interest that we'd be paying over that 10-year period. That's a lot of money. However, when you look at it in another light, which is if we were not to do that, what would it cost us in the increased cost of the projects? So I talked to Barry Bushman and came up with, well, let's use an inflation rate in project costs of, say, 5% a year. Could be high, could be low, who knows? At least it's something to work with. I calculated what that would be using one project a year for 6 years at a 5% inflation increase, and that additional cost, if we were to not package these together and do an upfront, is $296,328. I was astounded that it was that high, but that's what it is. And who's to say that the costs would be higher than that or lower than that? We don't know. We don't control that. A lot of it is, labor and fringes as the contractors pay their people to get the job done. A big cost of it is cost of the asphalt, and that's really kind of dependent on what the cost of petroleum is. We don't know what that's going to be.
Well, you'll get a more competitive bid too when
Right.
somebody's going to come to do
That's
10
another thing.
projects.
Right. If you take the total interest cost of 473 and subtract the cost of not doing it of 296, that reduces that interest cost in effect to 177,000. I talked with Barry about that. He says, look, he says, if you package a deal like this together, where there's 6 projects that are $2.5 million, that's a very attractive package for contractors to bid on. They're liable to give you a discounted rate. That's an unknown, we don't know what that amount could be, but if it was, say, a 7% discount, that would wipe out that difference. We've paid for the interest, if you will.
Well, and that's too, Paul, if we get a bank to get on board, you could take 40, 30, however much off the 177 for the bonding fee.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, let's say a bank give you a 3%. I mean, that's not a high number, but that's a solid number. I've talked a little bit, Paul, about quality of life. We talk about 40 years, the road hasn't been bad for 40 years. The road's probably been bad, Barry, for what do you think, 15 years? Some of these roads? 15 years, so, potentially it could be another, for some of these homeowners, another 5 to 10 years of a road like this. I look at safety. I've always hammered safety, and I've said it a few times, that my grandma died hitting a pothole on Erie Road. So if we could save a life by, fixing this, because these roads, when they're in that bad of shape, they're hard to plow. And they don't clean like a newer road, because that, I don't know if you noticed, but you drive down Douglas Road from Temperance to Erie, it's usually cleans up a lot quicker. It's, flatter, they can get their blades down flatter. So to me, with the amount of money we're going to save by packaging them, the amount of money we're going to save by inflation, the quality of life, safety, when you add all these together and you talk about fixing every single major project in Bedford Township, I mean, $150,000 to $170,000 in interest over 10 years isn't that much when you look at it. Yes, the $470,000 number, it's a tough number to swallow at first. But when you talk, because we're going to continue fixing these roads, when you talk about the inflation, it really, and thank you, TC, for bringing that up, because that was something, we didn't really think about until the last meeting. So, Mr. Francis went back and did some more homework, and, and two, I mean, we did talk to the road commission about, because I firmly believe by fixing all these roads, it's going to save them a lot of money. Cold patch, they don't have to cold patch these. I mean, they have to stick a lot of cold patch on these roads in the winters and in the summertime. You don't have they save the cost of beating up their equipment on these pothole-filled roads. So I do plan to get with Mr. Francis and go to one of their board meetings in the future and talk to them about a little help. They weren't on board to jump on board right now. I did talk to Mr. Pierce from the Road Commission. He talked to his board members. Their budget's very tight right now. But when we actually show a cost savings to them, I'm gonna go talk to them a little bit more about that, about getting a little help. So, for me, at first, when we talked about this, I was a little apprehensive with that big number, but it's, when you add everything up, for me, it makes sense, and I'm behind it. Mr. Francis?
To me, the beauty of it is if we were to be able to borrow that kind of money at 3.5%, the annual principal and interest payments would be less than $300,000. Our normal budget without big increases is $600,000 to $800,000. So we would be spending $300,000 out of that, say $800,000, leaving $500,000 to work on other smaller projects, not the size of the ones we were approving tonight, but to keep our roads maintained. So we can afford to do this and solve the problem. What it does is we have a 5-year plan that shows about $1 million a year for the next 5 years. So if we carve out these out of that, we've cut that annual amount in half almost that we can manage. We can afford this without any increase in our budget.
Well, and two, Mr. Francis, some people say, why would you do all the roads like that in 1 year? Because then you're going to have to replace them all in 1 year. You can speak to that, Mr. Bushman. That's not the case. I mean, as long as you maintain roads, you can always do a mill and fill 1 year and, let this one go a couple more years. I mean, as long as we maintain them like we are, these roads in, 30 years won't look like they are now. Would you agree with that? That, because some people have asked that, and fixing them all, we're going to have to replace them all like this at the same time, and, come on, can you come up and like, you were dying, you just did not want to get up.
With proper asset management techniques, crack filling, seal coats, microsurfacing and the like, there's so many more mix of fixes we have today that we didn't have just a few years ago. And it increases the longevity of the roads. Some will deteriorate faster than others. That's just a condition of the base, the soils, and everything else. But with proper maintenance and some of the cost share the road commission's providing these days, those roads should last a long time. But it's based on proper maintenance activities that we've been doing now for the last several years. It's much better than what we did in the past.
Well, and two, in bringing this forward right now, the important key is, no, we're not voting on it tonight, but if we have a consensus tonight to move forward, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in a pretty short period of time in order to get these done this year. Am I right?
Sure.
Because you're gonna have to, with bonding it, we're gonna have to be pretty accurate on the number. You know, we can't be $500,000 off if we're doing bonding. So you're gonna have to be core drilling these roads and getting samples right with the road commission and,
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do. It's almost March 1st, and you know, the sooner we get out the contracts, the better we're going to be. So if the board decides to move forward with this, certainly time is of the essence if you're looking at the 2018 construction season.
I'd like to make a comment. When you said if we do them all at once, we would have to redo them all at once. That's the real purpose of this asset management plan that we put into place 5 years ago. It manages those so that you're not replacing them all at the same time. And that's the beauty of it. It's a plan. And we need to commit as a board, and future boards need to commit to stick to a plan like that so that our roads don't end up as they were a few years back, when we had so many that were in so terrible shape. So I guess I'm seeking consensus. Any board member want to make a comment on it? Is
Mr.
it a good idea, bad idea?
Mr. Clements?
The other thing I was going to mention is, in this work that's been put together, we have a repair cost or a replacement cost. The assumption over the life is that while we factored in the 5% increase in work, we didn't factor in the additional damage to the roads. By the time you start factoring in the additional wear and tear over 5 to 6 years for the final replacement roads, you look at that additional cost, you reduce it from the 177, all of a sudden that number decreases substantially. The other thing is that it allows us to get a lot more aggressive on a PM, preventive maintenance standard, which is what I think everybody's striving for, to get out of the repair mode and to start getting to a place where we're maintaining roads as opposed to trying to dig our way out of the hole. And I think so far the numbers indicate that it is viable and that we could do this without additional cost. And I think you could even make an argument that we could see some small savings. But the numbers will ultimately bear that out based on interest.
Okay, Mr. Frederick?
I like the idea of packaging these projects, but based upon my experience with the road commission, it's going to be tough to get them in this year. Because by the time we get whatever proposal Paul works out, you go to a bank, it's sort of an unsecured loan because clearly you can't make the roads a collateral. If we go through the road commission for a bond, I think he's right. We're going to pay $40,000 or some number to Miller Canfield for their opinion vis-a-vis the sale of the bonds. I don't know what the road commission's been doing lately with these sort of things, but I think we ought to move forward to get some information so that we can make a rational business decision about going forward with this. Even if we only get half of the projects this year and half of them next year, we're ahead of the time. But I'd like to see whether or not the banks would even think about this. Clearly, the road commission will, because they're going to go on the full faith and credit of the township too. So any way we look at it, that's the collateral in this, which is the full faith and credit of the township. So I'd like to see both proposals if we can, and I guess, Paul, you better get on your hobby horse and get going.
Well, I will say this, when Crab Road popped up, with that business that was moving in, and Manick and Smith Group and the road commission, everybody worked, you know, swiftly, and it came together really quick. So I have confidence if, you know, we get the go-ahead to go forward and move forward with this, I think we could put it together and make it happen, so we'll see. Ms. Hirschberger?
I spoke to Paul about this. I kind of use the SADs that I work with as a starting point, and I told him that to bond a road, it will cost, the last bond I did cost us an additional $46,000, and that the banks were willing to loan money towards roads to the township for an SAD. And at the time, that SAD, I mean, it wasn't 2 million, but we were over the 1 million mark. And at that time, they were willing to do it at a 2.25% interest rate, which is very good. So I would stay away from the bonding and try and get the banks to do it first. And then as far as SADs, my past shows that, you know, when you bid out these projects, we're almost past the point of getting a good bid on it now. We'd want to wait till the winter now. That's when they're all looking for jobs. That holds.
There's one other
Really?
option you could look at too, and that would be an extend the completion date into 2019. Then they've got the luxury of being able to do it this year at their convenience and complete it next year. That's
And that-
the
that
one
would give it
advantage
that-
we could have.
Yeah, we used to do that quite often. That way they could schedule it late in the year if they got other things done. They could just move into that project. The real costs in all of these projects is the marshaling cost of getting their equipment, getting everything organized. And if they have a whole package, they can schedule it such that their marshaling costs are substantially less.
Mr. Steiner?
I mean, I would agree too with, I think it's something we need to proceed to look at. Again, just if a bank comes back and they've got a good rate, but I think it's worth looking at, maybe the bank says, you know, hey, I'll do 2.25%, but I can only do 1.5 mil or 1.25 mil. We could still look at two options of partial at a bank and partial, you know, bond. And you could also stagger your payments so you have better cash flow then too, instead of all being hit at once. So if we do get into that situation, but hopefully the bank would, you know, if they want to play, that we could get the entire thing at the low rate.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, I don't think you want to hear what I have to say. I wish it would have been a discussion instead of just a sale, but first of all, these roads, it doesn't say what you're doing to Whiteford Center for $265,000 or 112, or Crab for 400,000. And I thought we did do Stearns to Telegraph on Crab. I thought that's what we did to get the business in there.
That was just part of it.
First layer.
Two-phase. That first phase was just to get, Barry, go ahead.
Oh, wait, I know, I mean, it does.
It's a two-part project. It's about an $800,000
The
project.
point is, you know, I mean, we've all been around long enough to know that 10 years, if we're bonding, okay, we're kind of moving away from that. First of all, my experience with bonding when I was at the road commission was miserable. You bond, you do your project, and then before the bond is paid off, your road is falling apart or needs maintenance, and everything Barry talked about is another maintenance cost. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with staying within our budget. I mean, too many things. I pass, go. It's just crazy.
Nancy, as I stated, this does stay within our budget.
Well, so we have whatever all these totaled up to be, 988,000 plus 2.5 million. That's not in our budget. You would have to borrow to pay for all of that. What's wrong with taking them one road at a time, or two roads, or whatever? Here you got 6 roads. I mean, I don't understand the, you know, let's run to the bank and get all we can get right now. And like I said, it's going to be maintenance cost. You're not going to have these projects hold up for 10 years without maintenance costs. I mean, it just doesn't happen. And you'll still be paying for this project in interest or bonding or whatever in 10 years when people are, I'm just for staying within our budget.
Any more discussion, Mr. Fredericks?
Well, the one comment that I do want to make is that if the banks are willing to talk to us about doing this, we will have to be very careful about spending the general fund balance, because that's what they're going to be looking at as their security to make the payments. So we'll have to be careful about how we go forward in terms of budgeting and using the money out of the general fund balance to do other things. So we can't run around like a bunch of drunken sailors and spend money. If that's the direction we go, I'm more than willing to see how that looks. I think it's important that we do that. You get a bunch of jobs done all at once, you might get a good price. They take us 2 years to get it done, but we go forward. But I would caution that the security for all of this to the bank will be our general fund balance. And so let's not lose sight of that issue. Thank you.
Mr. Hirschberger?
This is only discussion, and I think what we're just looking for is, should Paul waste his time going out and seeing what he can do, correct? I mean,
All three of us, there's going to be a lot of work moving forward with the road commission,
I
Barry.
mean, we're not committing. If it comes back and it doesn't look good, then,
No.
and you will give us, you know, what's going to happen on each one of these roads, like Nancy's asking for, because she's right. I mean, I don't want to say I'm going to do $103,000 to this road and not even know what we're doing. So
You'll-
all that would come back in another discussion, I'm assuming.
You'll have exact figures, and Barry, I'm not sure how long, just like you have here tonight with what we just approved. And at that point, the board can say yes or no. If you say no, it'd just be disheartening because we just spent all this time and money getting that. So that's why, if you think it's a terrible idea, and I respect that, Ms. Stenberg, that's fine. But if we have a majority of the board that wants us to move forward, tell us. If not, say don't, and we'll stop. It's just an idea. Mr. Frederick?
I believe that we should ask Paul to keep on traveling with this issue, get some more concrete information, bring it back to us so that we can make a reasonable business decision whether it makes sense or not. With respect to the costs, we rely upon our engineer to give us a reasonable thought as to what the cost might be. I think these are all starting points. As our clerk has said, all this is do we want to go forward and get some more concrete information, and I think we should. Thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like move forward from all but one? Is that safe to say? Okay. Barry, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So there you go. We'll be calling you in the morning, Barry. Okay, do you have anything else? Anybody else have anything they want to say before we move on to that? Paul, you got anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, item 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. Trust is defined as the firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Any contract, whether legal or civil, must have trust as the foundation. No matter what the wording and no matter how detailed the agreement, trust still has to be the foundation. Trust is something we exercise every day as consumers and as human beings. We trust the products we purchase and consume. We trust our friends, our neighbors, our civil servants, our government, hopefully, our spouses if married, and without question and with all certainty, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. When a trust is broken or placed into question, it damages a relationship. Restoring that trust is difficult and may even be impossible for some people. The issue that faces this township and its relationship with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department will be ultimately determined by our trust. Whatever the outcome may be concerning billing issues, restoring and continuing this relationship with the Sheriff's Department has to be first addressed on trust and not on agreement language. Trust is based on what people say, which is validated by their actions. The two have to be synonymous in order for there to be trust. Relationships fail when trust can't be restored. It can be done only when two parties are open and truthful with one another. Honest misunderstandings can be reconciled. It is my faith that it is my hope that the trust be discovered in this matter with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. It is only when this takes place can a continued relationship be decided. You cannot separate truth from trust. The reason I trust in the Lord Jesus Christ is because he is the truth. Almost 50 years ago, I became a state trooper. and trust was imputed to me, and that being in a theological sense, in that trust was ascribed to me by virtue of a similar quality found in someone else. That someone else were former troopers. Took me 4 years to realize that. I was a trooper in 1972 in Niles Post, and I went across the street to the bank I was doing business at, and I wanted to buy a car, so I needed a loan. They directed me to the loan officer. I went in the office there and started filling out some paperwork. And the guy started asking me questions and stuff, and he said to me, he said, well, where do you work? I said, well, I work across the street. Well, there was no window in his cubicle. And he said, where's that? I said, at the state police post. He says, well, what do you do there? I said, I'm a state trooper. He grabbed the thing that I was filling out, ripped it up, and tore it up. I thought, well, I guess I'm not getting a loan. He said, how much money do you want? And I told him what I wanted, and he said, here, sign your name here, and I got the loan. But that trust would have been broken if I didn't pay that loan off. If I was late or if I was delinquent in my payments, that trust would have ended at that point. But it didn't, because every time I got paid, I went right across the street and I made that payment on that car. From then afterwards, all I had to do was go in and get a signature loan. Anytime I wanted money, I said, you need $500. The guy said, sign your name here, and that's the end of it. Now, that's the level of trust that I figured out after 4 years of being a state trooper. I got that trust because of who I was associated with. But you know what? I had to maintain that trust by being honest and forthright. And the bottom line is that's the atmosphere that must exist if we're going to contract with anybody, whether it's with the Sheriff's Department or anyone else. If that atmosphere does not exist, then we're in trouble. And that was given to me. That was a gift that was given to me by other people who did the same thing, that trusted me. And then I had to live up to that trust by doing the right thing at the right time. So I hope when we start looking at this contract with the Sheriff's Department, we take that level of trust into account. If that trust has been broken, it needs to be restored. And unless it's restored, then we shouldn't be doing business with anyone, whether it's the Sheriff's Department or anyone else. Thank you.
Somebody said they couldn't hear at home anymore, so. Okay, any more comments from the public? Come on up.
One thing I wanted to bring to your attention, working with the Monroe County Economic Development Corporation in partnership with the Monroe County Business Development Corporation, on March 21st, there will be a third annual Municipal Planning and Zoning Seminar. This year, we're going to host it at the Old Mill in Dundee. The intent is to help educate and communicate and further relationships, and it's intended to be for elected officials, planning commission members, particularly zoning board members. We're opening up to realtors, the commercial arena, and the like, and you'll have speakers from Dave Buell, Fred Lucas, who's the attorney that represents many of the townships, will speak on legalities of planning and zoning. You'll have Mike Bosonic speaking on the new countywide GIS program. Tim Lake with Monroe BDC will speak on the Monroe Link, the new I-75 corridor study and improvement along that corridor in anticipation of the new bridge. And then a keynote speaker will be Florence Buchanan, who will speak on the latest trends in local government improving the customer experience. So it's going to be hosted once again by the Monroe County Economic Development Corporation, 6 to 9 o'clock, March 21st. There will be some beverages and food, light hors d'oeuvres and the like there. So we hope that you encourage all your board members as well as your planning commission and ZBA members and the like to attend.
Thank you very much. I plan on going. Any more comments from the public?
Ken Gagne, 8311 Lambert Street, Lambertville. I'm having a real hard time accepting the stop signs, the new stop signs on Consier in Secor. I come out of the house 2 to 3 times a day. I'm in the post office at least twice a day. And my timing is right along with the timing on Secor. And there's times that it's almost impossible to get out of the post office because you got one car stopping at the stop sign, you got the next one rolling. So you go to get out of the post office, you got a half a dozen cars right there. And by the time they stop at the light on Dean, now you can't get out of the post office. The other thing that I'm having a hard time to accept that I heard tonight is a bike lane on Lewis Avenue. Lewis Avenue is pretty busy. And to put bikes going 3-4 mile an hour to a car doing 40 mile an hour, I think it's asking for a whole lot of trouble. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Sure.
Dale Track, 2842 Sanibel Lane. If you look inside the folders there, you see that put together combination of years of the breakdown of the homestead millage bill that the average homeowner might see. It's broken down by home value, taxable value, total millage costs. It includes the $9.75 fire department assessment, the 0.5% admin fee, total cost per month, and total cost per year. At the bottom, you'll notice that it has the millages, and as they expire going into the further years out, you have 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 22 there. And as a breakdown, how it will affect the homeowners and the decrease in their taxes over the time. You know, I talked to the board, it was last year, I believe, about coming together with a comprehensive millage package, working with other entities within the township, possibly the county, talking to the schools, trying to put together a package as opposed to everybody going about it individually. If Bedford's going to move forward, I think it's better that it all goes forward at once. That way you don't have the certain demographics fighting for the same dollars. Now, one of the ways that Bedford can work on improving itself is people that are concerned about different areas, let's say the schools. They're always concerned about extra school funding. Well, my suggestion would be contact State Rep Jason Shepherd and Senator Dale Zorn about eliminating the no-fault car insurance. From what Mr. Shepherd said, that the average homeowner could save $200 a month. When you start looking at $2,400 a year, people might be more inclined to vote for a millage and help improve Bedford. So those are things going forward that need to look at in order to improve our community. Now, one of the things that troubled me this past week, you know, I'm sure we're all disturbed about what went on in Florida with the tragedy down there. What troubles me is we've had a school board member politicize this. We had school board member Lisa McKeag come out and say that safety is not negotiable, will always be our #1 priority. Well, I agree, it should be our #1 priority. But since she forwarded that 2014 millage that went down by 62% in this township, her and 3 other board members that were on there since 2014, they had opportunities to improve security, but instead they took out a loan, $165,000 for band instruments, $15,000 for choir robes, $7,000 to improve the track, and you know, there's other ways they could have saved money as well to improve security. They spent $175,000 on overtime for the janitors over there. If they'd subcontracted that out, just on the overtime alone, it would have been over $14,000 a month. And that doesn't even mention, well, not to mention the $54,000 that they spent on GPSing the buses. So if we're going to politicize things in order to forward millages, you know, safety of the kids is very important, as well as the staff. But you can't pick and choose the issue. If it is a #1 priority, treat it like the #1 priority. But don't use it to further another millage. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Okay, seeing none. Comments from Board members, Ms. Tinneberry?
Pass.
Mr. Steiner?
Just a quick thought, Mr. Prony, I know you were one to really push for the snow plowing. Applaud you that, and it seemed to have really paid off, at least this last big snow we had. Just from a curiosity standpoint, once we get through the final 2017-18 snow season, sort of be curious, because I remember, and Mr. Frederick, correct me if I'm wrong, back when you were in office many moons ago,
Many.
and I was just coming back into Bedford, and I was told that somebody talked back then about a $10 a year, whether it was a tax or whatever, for snow plowing, and it threw quite a few arms up in the air. But what I'd like to see, Paul, is take the total cost, whatever we applied this year, and divide it by the number of taxable parcels. Let's come back with that number and see how small that number really turned out to be. I think it's a good service tool to show that it was a wise choice when we do that.
Well, I just have to know if what was proposed, was that buying trucks, was that?
Well, I'm talking about what,
When you wanted to do the millage, I mean, I would have to, because this is just,
well, that was strictly for
Manpower.
snow removal back when Lamar had it, I believe.
Yeah, what we thought at that time was $10 a parcel, which would have given us about $90,000 for the year. And we thought we would take the $90,000, and it may last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Unless you had a huge blizzard or something. And fundamentally, they said no. I did several somewhat scientific studies, and it was like 90% no. That's somebody else's job. So, yeah, that kite went up in the air, got shot down very quickly.
So, but I mean, so my point there was, I mean, we do, all as individuals, we spend money on things that frankly we don't need. I think again, I think it'd be just a good number to show that, you know, it may come up to $1 a parcel, if that, you know, I'd just like to see a number. I think it'd be a good thing to show. And then the other thing too is, as I was going through some of the bills and everything, if the board's okay with it, I'd like to contact Paul Trinka from IT, right, and get his opinion on looking into Skype for our phones instead of an actual phone system. Looking at about $1,200 in this last bill for phones. And Skype runs through your computers and goes through the internet protocol. I'd like to see what kind of cost that maybe we can save some money if the board's okay with me contacting him and going that route.
I'm always for saving money, so I'm good with it.
Can I say something to that?
Ms. Hirschberger?
I'm also working with Verizon because they had some cost-cutting options with some companies, so I'm looking into those options too.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'll get a hold of Paul and look at that, and then I'll talk with you, and then we'll come up with an idea that we can see what we can save.
All right.
That's all.
Okay. Mr. Frederick?
Just one comment, Ed. Chief, my recollection is that Sarah 3 and CERCLA, every industry in this township is supposed to deliver to you a list of chemicals and where they're stored in their facilities. Do we still have that documentation, or have you checked into it lately? Because I was listening to the ordinance officer talking about chemicals and things like that. They're supposed to deliver that to you. And I know at one time that was all taken care of. Has it been taken care of now? I mean, this is important for you guys. You show up at the industrial park and they've got a bunch of propane or some other terrible gases hanging around.
That's correct. So yes, as far as industry, or were you speaking as the ordinance?
Well, it used to be Sarah 3 and then the CERCLA, and I forgot the...
So yes, they're required to submit those to us, and we're working on updating our plans. Now, I believe what the ordinance department was talking about was some of these home businesses.
Yeah.
And that, it's difficult because oftentimes we don't know. And when he approached and asked us about our feelings on the issue, I shared with him that by and large, our biggest concern is, for the most part, with the way that it's designed right now, we don't really know often when we're going into a house, if we're going into a house expecting to go into a basement fire, and I've had some experiences with that earlier in my career, where we went into a basement fire thinking that it was a, storage of family items, what you'd normally expect, and we ran into some chemicals and things and really some tricky situations. So I think it's kind of difficult to keep up as far as the chemicals that may be in a home and a home business, rather than like we do in the industrial.
I didn't expect that for homes, because that's very difficult. I guess my question is, we're moving some industrial people around in our industrial park. And so I guess maybe the fire marshal and/or you and/or somebody should be probably following up with that.
Correct.
Just to make sure that we know what's there and the hazards that you might be running into. I don't know if, originally it was just a bunch of paper went into a big box. You could never figure out what the heck you had. I just wonder if it's improved any.
Yes and no.
Okay,
so we're working on updating all of it as far as our part of our pre-fire planning. So, and we're trying very hard. We've looked at a couple different programs in the last 6 months or so. As far as software upgrades, we'd like to get it all so that we had it in a digital form, so that when we were at fires, we could pull it up from the front of the engines instead of having to go back to the files.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm done. I pass.
Mr. Clemens?
I wish Damon was still here. There were a couple things that he's been doing that he left off the list. One of them is the emergency preparedness for Town Hall. He's done an incredible job with that. I've had a chance to work with him a little bit. He's done all the heavy lifting. And I want to tell you, Mr. Supervisor, thank you, because you've obviously created a dynamic for him where there's a lot of value add coming out of ordinance in a way that you hear a lot of people in the community talking about it. And I think it's fantastic when we can offer additional services for, negligible, if none, additional expenditures. So I appreciate that he's taking the effort and that you're giving him that latitude to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Francis?
Nothing other than to mention that real estate taxes were due by the 14th of this month. On the 15th, we're required by, excuse me, statute to assess a penalty plus interest and the like until they're paid. If they're not paid by the end of this month, then they're turned over to the county for collection and go delinquent, and then the county collects them. So I'd just encourage people that might have fallen behind and haven't paid their taxes yet to give us a call and make an arrangement to get that done as soon as possible to protect your interest in your home. We're concerned about that. There are some that are struggling financially, and there is help available if you just call and let us know. We'd be more than willing to help in any way that we possibly can.
Ms. Hirschberger?
Just to let the people in the Mohawks and Indian Acres know that the contracts were signed, and those two projects will be going forward this spring. They'll be doing pre-con meetings right before that, but they suspect that those projects will both be started in the spring and completed before fall. And that's all I have.
Okay, a few things. This Thursday, we're going to have our Lewis Avenue Redevelopment Committee meeting. We actually had a huge map, or Manica Smith had a huge map blown up of Temperance. It's actually hanging in the room C if you want to take a look at it. But we'll be talking Thursday about our vision and the TAP grant and a corridor improvement authority. We have to have, moving forward, a tax capture. We can't have two DDAs in the township. I have no desire to touch the one that's in Lambertville, currently generating $180,000 a year. And we really don't want to mess with that. I mean, that's a lot of money coming into that area, and it continuously improves it. They have a lot of projects they can continue to do. So we're coming up with one in downtown Temperance. Obviously, it'll come before this board, but we're going to discuss that Thursday. But it is a way similar to capture funds. It's something we're looking for the future. It's not going to capture $180,000 a year when we start it, but it's something. We got to start somewhere. You know, if something like this would have been done, 20 years ago, we'd be in a different spot in Temperance, I believe. But I think it came out in 2005 is when it came out or something. So, but we'll be doing that Thursday. I wanted to mention too, myself and I think 4 employees from the township went to a sexual harassment class at Team Cog. I think it's very important to stay up on what's going on. You read the newspapers almost daily and the Facebook and TV about different things going on and with elected officials, and I learned a lot. I learned not to tell anybody they look nice at work, or don't give them a hug, or don't offer your hand for a handshake unless they offer. It's nuts, to be quite honest with you, some of the things that was talked about, but it was definitely eye-opening. Snow plowing. I've been kind of waiting for something to happen since we've actually moved with the seasonal people. I'm like, man, are we going to get this kind of show what we did? But outside of purchasing the snow plow at $6,000, we're roughly, I think with that last snow was probably around the $3,000, $4,000 mark. So we're at about $7,000 right now that we spent of the 10 in utilizing Stoneco and with our seasonal people. It was successful for sure, but there was definitely some kinks. I mean, there were some roads that just got missed. These guys are new at it. We had 6 people. We broke it in 6 quadrants and said, go do it. So I would think if these same people stay on board after, a year or so of doing this, they would get it down to where they get more efficient. I even actually, a couple days after I got in a snowplow and hit some neighborhoods that were missed, I just wanted to kind of check out see how they looked. I don't like snowplowing at all. So they can have it. And I don't like the whole process of scheduling it, because I talked to Randy Pierce. I don't envy his position at all, trying to gauge what to do with the snow, because I can't tell you how many times it changed in the whole week we were working on it. And then Friday, it all changed again. We were supposed to get another 5 inches Saturday. We got nothing. So we had to cancel everything we did and call all the employees. And then, it's a tough job trying to gauge what to do, so, but it did work. And we'll continue to get better. I put it out there on Facebook. If your subdivision was missed or was done subpar, shoot me a message. I think I had 180 messages. So I couldn't respond or keep up with all the messages. But we are trying. We're trying to get something that's not a Band-Aid. We're trying to get something that's for the future. And yes, you could say it's something that the road commission's supposed to do, but we don't have to do all these extra roads either, but we're assisting. We're doing what we can do as a township because we believe in the safety and welfare of the township. That's what we're all elected to do. And I believe getting these roads cleared on day 1 in the subdivisions is a big deal for schools, buses, safety. I mean, you can go on and on. Same thing with roads. That's why I'm behind it 100%.
Mr. Supervisor, while you're on the snowplow real quick, I will give you one success story you didn't get an email or a phone call on. Village Meadows subdivision, gentleman's lived there I think it's about 15 years. And he lives in a cul-de-sac area, which always has very poorly been plowed. He said best it's ever been since he's lived there, and the snow wasn't all sitting in the middle of the driveway. The guy did it right.
Yeah. Well, I've got to give kudos to the road commission too. They've been amazing this year in working with me and coordinating and helping me out. I think I called Randy about 6 times on what he's doing with his guys with the weather, so I could kind of gauge what to do. But they really are. They're doing a great job. So if you are watching, I appreciate you guys being here like you have been this year. It doesn't go unnoticed. Real quick, with Facebook, we didn't do Facebook Live tonight. We're trying to move towards the link. Mr. Welling and Ms. Hirschberger, they've, with the whole YouTube deal, so I put links on various different pages to go to it. I checked it out, and not many people were on it, so maybe we'll have to go back to doing the Facebook Live thing because it seemed like we got some more traffic. But that's the direction we were trying to move in, was getting away from Facebook Live, but just putting links all over these pages to where people could hit the link and go just to one spot. But so If you didn't like the way it was set up, I might regret saying this, but shoot me a message. And we'll kind of go from there. Other than that, that's all I've got. No further questions. We stand adjourned.